Okay, so those people who know me know I love to talk about water being H2O a lot, because that's our standard definition of a scientific identity. You might also know that I'm really a big fan of the work of Hasok Chang, and his book is Water H2O. Okay, so also you might know that I was recently on the Digital Gnosis channel talking to Nathan Ormond, about philosophy and a whole bunch of stuff. So if you haven't checked that out, it's over on his channel. I'll put it up on my channel in due course, I guess, but you should go check it out on his channel for the time being. But anyway, in the course of doing that, I found out that there's a series of lectures by Hasok Chang on pragmatism and philosophy of science. And this is a 7 hour series of lectures. Holy moly, 7 hour series of lectures. So I think I'm going to watch part of it, and we may as well watch part of it together. Um, so there's a lot that I'm hoping to learn, and interesting things to gather from this. So I sort of know something about his views. I've said I've read this book, and found it very convincing. So, but about this whole idea of pragmatic realism and the idea of realism for realistic people, I think is that the name of one of these? Yeah, realism for realistic people. I like that idea. So I'm very interested to check this out. And let's dive right into it. Obviously, we're not going to sit here for the next 7 hours, but I'm going to plan on doing a series of these every so often.
Start two. I'm very happy to be finally here because it was already in October of 2013 that Professor Endler Lökevi invited me to come to Tartu, and the occasion for
Oh,
Professor Rein Vihalem. I was unfortunately not able to come at the time, and very sadly, Professor Vihalem has since then died. I have met him twice at the International Society for the Philosophy of Chemistry conferences, which he was instrumental in organizing and once brought to Tartu before I was a member of that group. So I'm very, very sorry to miss him, but I'm glad to be delivering a series of talks which in many ways builds on the ideas of Professor Vihalem and Professor Lökevi on what they call practical realism. So that is what I think of as Tartu philosophy, and I'm happy to be building positively on Tartu philosophy. So
and what philosophy? Where was this given? I don't know. It doesn't really say, as far as I can tell in the description. Oh, one day I'll learn how to read. That's right here, my finger pointing at it. The University of Tattoo. Okay, so what he's saying is he's going to be giving his talks in a way that aligns with the kind of a philosophical view which comes from this university. I don't know where the University of Tattoo is. Um, hey Siri, where's the University of Tattoo? Uh, nice try, Siri. We'll look it up later.
very happy being here. In this series of lectures this week, 4 of them, I seek to present a new direction in the philosophy of science.
Ah, this is 2017. Hmm.
Now, these lectures are being given here for the first time, although there was a previous version which I gave in Bielefeld, which Lisa Heller has already heard, so apologies to you for repetitions. And some other occasions are little bits and pieces, but this week I'm giving you a new and hopefully improved synthesis. Part of my purpose is to make the philosophy of science truly relevant to scientific practice and to social concerns about the nature and role of knowledge in human life.
Yeah,
Now, one
that's an important point. A lot of criticism of philosophy of science is that it's useless to actual science. So this is a good and interesting goal.
might ask, and people do very often ask, what is the point of this strange academic discipline called the philosophy of science? The famous physicist Richard Feynman is said to have said once, philosophy of science is about as useful to scientists as ornithology is to birds. Meaning birds know very well how to be birds and do their birdie things without ornithologists telling them how to be birds. And he thought it was like that with scientists and philosophers of science. Now, because you're sitting in this room attending this lecture, you must think there is some point to this business of philosophy of science. Even if you're not yourself a philosopher of science, still, I think it will be useful to think about the purpose of this business and articulate it more sharply. So that's what I'm going to try to do. The most important step I want to take in this series of lectures is to offer a realistic ideal of knowledge. Instead of the common idea that lay people and philosophers like have, that science should give us proven universal truth about the reality lying behind observable appearances. I think we have all seen the unproductive reaction that sets in when science fails to attain this impossible ideal. So when science is shown to be imperfect, a false equivalency opens up. People say, oh, evolution is just a theory, so it should be treated equally with creationism or intelligent design, a particular problem in the United States. Or the theory of anthropogenic climate change, they say, is not proven completely, so it is only as good as its denial. If science pretends to give us absolutely proven knowledge, the opponents of science have an easy job. They only have to show that science falls short of that impossible standard, rather than needing to show that their own nonsense is actually better than science, according to some reasonable criteria that we can all agree. So you get phenomena like this. It is impossible to escape this man, so I might as well just get him out of the way.
I didn't even see that. I was watching it. Oh, God. So is Trump. The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. When did Trump tweet that shit? November 2012. Holy moly. He's raising a good and important point. The job of science is not, you might say, to reveal the ultimate truth about reality. And even even though you say evolution is just a theory, because we could always find out that we're wrong, therefore we can't say it's the ultimate truth about reality with any like confidence from a scientific point of view. Nonetheless, we can say that we think we know that is true. I think that's where he's going to go with this. I think, although I don't really know, but this is very interesting. Okay.
Donald Trump actually tweeted in 2012 that global warming was a Chinese hoax. Something the Chinese made up in order to hurt American industry by tying it up with regulations. And when challenged about this, people who support this kind of idea say, well, science doesn't prove anything either. So this is as good as science. No, we have to resist this kind of way of thinking. So in order to avoid these evils, what we need to do is make an operational ideal that captures our best epistemic practices.
Well, this is making philosophy of science useful to the general public, I think, but not the scientists, right? Or maybe what he's saying is, hold on, let him finish. Okay. Oh, he's got a book coming out. I wonder if this is this out already? Do I not know about this book? Holy snurfies. Yeah, it came out 2022. Okay. Huh. Okay, well, we will put this on the reading list. Hmm. Very cool. What am I doing?
while accepting that they can be improved further and indicating how that might be done. By an operational ideal, I mean something that we can actually put into practice, right? Rather than something like the philosophical idea of correspondence to unobservable reality that our statements are supposed to attain.
Wait, hold on. So he said he wants to articulate a realistic ideal of knowledge. So rather than thinking of knowledge as correspondence to reality, wait, hold on. What did he just say?
Operational ideal, I mean something that we can actually put into practice, right? Rather than something like the philosophical idea of correspondence to unobservable reality that our statements are supposed to attain. More on that tomorrow. Okay. Among philosophers who care about the place of science in society, there's a great felt need for philosophy of science fit for purpose in informing scientific practice and its social engagement. This is the kind of thing that we do in the society I helped to found, called Society for Philosophy of Science in Practice, SPSP. Now, removing this illusory ideal of knowledge that I've just mentioned requires a reform of the very notion of truth and reality that's prevalent in philosophical discourse. The most relevant battleground here is the fierce, long-standing debate on scientific realism.
Yeah.
I wish to turn away from standard realist attempt to show that the impossible is somehow possible, that empirical science can attain assured truth about what goes beyond experience. I would like to rescue the notion of realism from the so-called realist philosophers, who are usually the most unrealistic of people.
He wants to rescue realism from realistic philosophers who are usually the most unrealistic. That's good wordplay.
I would like to rescue the notion of realism from the so-called realist philosophers, who are usually the most unrealistic of people.
So the realists are the most unrealistic in the sense that they posit these unrealistic ideals for science to achieve. Scientific realists. As someone who's friendly to these kind of unrealistic ideals, ouch. No, but it is interesting. I mean, as I said, as I say all the time and lots of times, I am sympathetic to the idea that you find in people like Chalmers that there is an end of science and there's a completed, a compact base set of facts about physical reality that it could be knowable by an ideal reason or all that kind of stuff. So I'm sympathetic to that. But on other days, I'm not sympathetic to that. So this is a much needed antidote because it is often very simplistic and the devil, as they say, is in the details. So I think we need people like Chang to pay careful attention and help us pay careful attention to those details. So this is, and it's often, especially you might think in philosophy related around consciousness, not done as much as we ought to. So cool.
When a reshaped realism into a doctrine that is useful for scientists and others who engage in empirical inquiries. So I'm currently working on a book entitled Realism for Realistic People, and I'm very pleased to be presenting a sketch of that book here in Tartu. As I mentioned, it's been given in many places in different parts, but this, I think, is the first time I can see the shape of the whole thing clearly enough, so I hope you can see it too. It's certainly a work in progress, and I really welcome questions, suggestions, objections, particularly for those of you participating in the workshop, but for everybody attending today and the rest of the week. Now, I said I want to reform the philosophy of science through a revitalized pragmatist philosophy.
Yeah,
Pragmatism, I
okay, so
think,
you
is
guys
our
have
best
pun.
hope for philosophical framework that will
Yeah.
facilitate proper attention to how science is actually practiced.
I mean, this internal realism stuff by Putnam caused kind of a big deal. I noticed one kind of name that's missing from this list, one might think. Um, what rhymes with Morty? I wonder why he doesn't have a Rorty on here. Maybe he'll say.
The original American pragmatist philosophers, I'm looking especially to John Dewey and someone you may not know much about, Clarence Irving Lewis, C.I.
C.I.
Lewis,
Lewis.
not David Lewis, the more famous philosopher, nor
Hey,
C.S. Lewis.
what? David Lewis is more famous. C.S. Lewis. Yeah, we're just reading that with the kids. Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe because their school's doing something about some magical lands, whatever. But C.I. Lewis, Modal Logic. Yeah, yeah, man. I'm okay. I didn't know Clarence Irving was the full C.I. Cool. But
Who wrote.
let's hear
Someone
those.
you may not know much about, Clarence Irving Lewis, C.I. Lewis, not David Lewis, the more famous philosopher, nor C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the rest of it.
The Lion, the Witch, and the rest of it. That takes more effort to say than the wardrobe. I did not know he was a comedian as well as a brilliant philosopher. This is fun. Okay.
There are certainly some more recent philosophers, too, who have already anticipated much of what I'm trying to articulate. So Hilary Putnam's idea of what he called internal realism, which he later said he should have called pragmatic realism, is clearly one of these predecessors to what I'm trying to do. The Chilean philosopher of physics, Roberto Torretti, he has advanced a similar view. And I also find great affinity to Sami Pihlström in Finland, who has advanced a pragmatist neo-Kantian set of ideas. Now, I hope to have some time to discuss some
You
of.
can kind of see the kind of theme here is this kind of Kantianism and realism about what's in the realm of experience, I guess. Interesting. Okay. Huh. You know me, my tendencies go towards flat-footed scientific realism. So this will be cool and challenging for for someone like me who's very naive.
These ideas more in the rest of these lectures. But one main predecessor I must mention is, again, Professor Vihalem with his practical realism.
Okay, so I don't know this VLM. So these are the main tenets. Science doesn't represent the world as really is. The fact that the world is not accessible independently of scientific paradigms does not mean it's unacceptable. Okay. Theoretical activity is only one aspect of science. Scientific research is practical activity. Purpose. Okay, right. Science, practical, social, historical activity. Realism, science is practice in a way in which is engaged with the real world. So that, So I think this is the central thing. Science does not represent the world as it really is from a God's eye point of view. Rather, it's a practical activity aiming to interfere with nature. That's what this business here is. This is what I got mostly from the is water H2O stuff about why we think water is H2O wasn't really a discovery of a crucial scientific experiment, but rather people just got bored and started asking different questions. It's been very influential. So, but it's realism because science and practice is a way to engage with the real world. But it doesn't say it's not realism though, because it doesn't say the scientific things are really real. Are they? Okay, anyway, interesting. Let's hear him go through these because he'll probably shed some light on this.
Whose main ideas I just present here, quoting from the summary made by Professor Lockevi and Professor Wierlem in 2012. And I mean, these are crucial ideas for the kind of philosophy I'm trying to do. I agree with almost every word of what I'm quoting here. It's very important to start by recognizing that what science does is not representing the world as it really is from a God's eye point of view, and to recognize that scientific research is a practical activity, a purposeful and critical, theory-guided material interference with nature. Right? And we recognize the social and historical dimensions of scientific practice, and they emphasize that it is a kind of realism because it is about how we engage with what we must call the real world. So I agree with very nearly everything here. So how do I propose to add to these words and the explanations that they have given of these words in many papers over the years? Now, in a way, at the end of the day, you might say, yeah, it's just the same thing. And I would be happy with that. But it will be presented in my own way. It is by attempting a more systematic and in-depth understanding of scientific practice in terms of the epistemic activities that constitute the acquisition, the evaluation, and the use of knowledge that I intend to contribute more to the work that you see summarized here. So this is the plan for this week's lectures. In the remainder of lecture 1 today, I'm going to review the basic meaning of pragmatism and discuss how a pragmatist analysis of science can move actually forward, how to actually do pragmatist philosophy. The crucial concept in my account, which will be explained in detail in lecture 2 tomorrow, is the notion of what I have called operational coherence, by which I mean a harmonious fitting together of actions that is conducive to the successful achievement of our aims, rather than logical consistency or any other inferential relation holding among a set of propositions. Tomorrow, I'm also going to propose a new philosophical theory of truth based on this notion of operational coherence. I called this originally coherence, truth, and reality, but that's clearly too much to fit into one lecture. So reality will come into lecture 3, in which I will lay out my own position on the issue of scientific realism, which will be a development of the doctrine of what I called active realism in chapter 4 of this book, which was already mentioned, which is the main text for the seminars happening in the mornings. My position will be based on a coherence-based notion of reality, as well as truth. So these notions of truth and reality will serve as the backbone of my realism for realistic people. And then lecture 4 will offer another layer of meaning in pragmatism, which I will then take as a thoroughgoing and complete empiricism motivated by a humanist view on science. And I'm going to close by showing how that outlook leads us back to pluralism, which is a main theme of the book of 2012. So that's the whole plan for the next 4 days. Now, let me start seriously into lecture 1.
Okay, so let's go ahead and pause it here. This is already getting up there. Wow, okay, very interesting, huh? First of all, I got to get this book and read it. There's a lot to think about. This is going to be fun. So I think I'm going to do a series on this set of lectures and see how they go. Cool. All right.